So if there's anybody, there's a couple people for 370. 2 doctors. Right, would these be nursing doctorates? Okay, fine, we're not doing that bill today. Thank you. Next time, if you can identify, say, if you're a nurse or, MD, whatever, let me know what kind of doctorate, please. Since everybody's getting doctorates nowadays in physical therapy, occupational therapy, everything else, I like to know with whom I am. This meeting of the Health and Human Services Committee together and in session. Let me get 3:45 out of the way before we go to you, Representative Knight. Okay, 3:45 across our state, we had reports that women are being shackled during pregnancy, even during labor and delivery. As far as I'm concerned, shackling at any time is barbaric and should not be happening to a pregnant woman in the prison system in this day and age. There are other kinds of restraints, if somebody is truly that combative, that are much less invasive and much safer to use with somebody. And when you see pictures of a pregnant woman in labor with shackles around her wrist and her waist and her feet, you know, it's at least 1 foot, it's pretty damning. So what we have here is a bill, and we have our, now this is not that, I will say, I'm proud to say, that is not happening in our state prisons. Apparently it is happening in some of our smaller jails around our state. And perhaps it's a lack of knowledge of the damage that can be done, or the lack of knowledge that there are other restraints possible. I would like to think it's that instead of attacking the dignity of a pregnant woman. So we have the definitions to the bill, and really what goes on starts on the second page, that there will be no shackling of women in their second and third trimesters of pregnancy, and that there would not be any shackling in the postpartum part of after delivery. Nothing in the subsection shall prohibit the use of medical restraints by a licensed healthcare professional to ensure the medical safety of the woman. The other thing is, if there is a compelling reason for them to use restraints in the postpartum period, they would be able to do that, but only using hand restraints. We have no actual data of what goes on, how many pregnant women we have in these situations, and we would like to have that. So starting on line 47, the Public Health Department has laid out some reporting requirements for women that are pregnant in our jails. And so we can find out the type of complications. One of the reasons for this, besides the fact that it's just morally wrong to shackle pregnant women, especially certainly by the third trimester, when it's very obvious to anybody that a woman's pregnant, that is the fact that we are at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, when it comes to maternal child health indicators, as far as being, a state where we have a number of live births without complications, and we have high incidence of mother mortalities. And we are trying very desperately with the bills that are coming to make sure that we do everything, that we start going up instead of being 48th or 49th in the states, and that we correct what we can correct to improve those numbers, and not just the fact that we want a higher rating, but we want to take better care of pregnant women and women postpartum across our state. So I will be glad to answer any questions from the committee. We have no questions? Okay. We have some people that would like to speak. If you will just be brief about that. Okay, Amy Ariel? R, wait a minute. R? Okay. Yes, please. Tell us your name again and who you're with.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to address you today. I am here to offer my support for House Bill 345,
My name is Amy Ard, and I am the Executive Director of Motherhood Beyond Bars. It's the only nonprofit in Georgia with a laser focus on pregnant, incarcerated, and newly postpartum women. We offer 4 programs, 3 on a weekly basis at the Helms facility where all women in state custody are held. And we do prenatal education, postpartum support, and prenatal yoga, all at no cost to the state. Motherhood Beyond Bars, really, I am standing here today to serve as a resource for members of this committee and legislators who want to learn more about pregnancy and birth behind bars in Georgia. We have a long way to go to match programs that are currently being offered in other states as close as Alabama, where childbirth doulas and breast milk pumping rooms are available to make sure that mothers and babies are safe and secure. Alabama reports that programs like this actually increase safety in the prisons and make it a safer place both for the women and certainly happier for their babies. House Bill 345 is a good start. Shackling pregnant women has proven to be unnecessarily restrictive, and that's why in the majority of states there are laws in place to prohibit it. Motherhood Beyond Bars stands ready to continue working with the Department of Corrections, who we have a very good relationship with, to think creatively about how we can implement programs like childbirth support and breastfeeding support, and we certainly support shackling as a first step to ending practices that diminish the dignity of women and harm babies. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
All right, don't go anywhere. Are there questions? Okay. Representative Petrie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ma'am, thank you for being here. Quick question. So can you speak to, just so we understand the degree to which this is an issue, can you speak to the number of live births we have in our correctional facilities and jails today in Georgia?
I know that there are people here that can speak to jails, and there are actually people here from the Department of Corrections. Our program, on average, there are about 50 births per year. So the women that come through our childbirth program, about 50 a year. The parenting support that we offer at Lee Arundel, considering that about 76% of women in incarceration are mothers to underage dependent children, we meet the needs of a whole lot more women at Lee Arundel through those programs.
Do we have somebody that can speak to the number in our jails? Okay. Yep. You better come to the podium so it don't go away.
I don't have much to say about that. I don't have any data on that. I will say this, the last time we did check, and it was just a kind of a random check among sheriffs, there are not any babies born in county jails in our state. We certainly, the sheriffs, they have best practices on handling that. They get them, if they are arrested, they get them out of those jails back in the home setting or somewhere else. So I will tell you today, there's very few babies born in county jails. If somebody would contest that, I'd certainly be able to look further, but I don't think we have many births there.
Okay, I think that's why we wanted to put in there some reporting issues so that we could get the correct data. Thank you for what you and your group do.
Thank you.
Public health nurses used to do a lot of that, and we seem to have lost that as something our public health nurses do. And I think that's with the mother-baby courses and the parenting courses and all is a real loss for our state. Karen Hanahan, ran here again. I probably ruined your last name.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Karen Hanrahan, and I'm a certified nurse midwife and advocacy chair for Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies Coalition of Georgia. We want to thank you, Chairwoman Cooper, for carrying this important piece of legislation. I wish I could say that the unnecessary shackling and restraint of pregnant women does not happen in our state, but we know that it still does. This is of special concern in the municipal and county facilities where there is not a standard policy to prevent this from taking place. We are especially thankful that this bill will also collect needed data on the birth and maternal outcomes for patients who are incarcerated during pregnancy and or the birth of their babies. I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Do we have questions? Okay, no questions. Thank you very much. Okay, Sharon Turner.
Thank you, Chairwoman, and the committee here. My name is Sharon Turner. I am a member of Women on the Rise. I'm formerly incarcerated female. I've been out of prison 25 years. During the time I was in Gwinnett County, where I was arrested and convicted, I witnessed a pregnant woman being humiliated, mistreated, abused, having to strip. Every night the correction officers would come and take her down to the holding cell and strip her where other people were coming in to get booked, could see her, and then they would bring her up right before breakfast. One of the last times they harassed her, she refused to go willingly, and they drug her and she miscarried. They ended up putting her in isolation, which was a unit above everybody, and never took her to get any kind of treatment. And so having treatment like that, being a pregnant woman, I have never had children, but to witness it, it's something, and mentally it's a really hard issue to deal with. And she ended up actually being released from the county after several months and having to go into some type of therapy. So I think, you know, we have to also look at, as far as the dignity of women, whether they were shackled or not, what happens if you lose your baby. A lot of times babies aren't birthed. They're being miscarried in the prison or county jails, and there's no aftercare for that woman. And it is a really big issue, and I appreciate your time, and hopefully you think about what I just spoke on.
Thank you very much. The questions? Anybody? I hopefully in 25 years, applaud you for being out for 25 years and turning your life around. But hopefully in 25 years, maybe they've improved a little bit. Thank you for coming. Sonia Spears.
Madam Chair and committee members, thank you for having me here today. Actually, I'm a 25-and-a-half-year recovering alcoholic. 25 plus years ago, I was also incarcerated, and I did witness subhuman conditions for the women that were in the facility that were pregnant. And I've been gainfully employed with the same company for over 20 years, and I do service work in the prison system. And some of the same women that are incarcerated there do still undergo different treatment, and they do need more coping skills with what they have to face and being parents in the facility. And the treatment, even though new jails are being built, technology is a finger touch away. Some of the treatment of some of the people that are incarcerated, no matter what their stories are, they're still treated as subhuman, and that to me is not discipline. I came from a very disciplined home. My dad was in the military. My mother was a professional until the day that she died. So discipline to me is teaching someone in the way that they should behave in all arenas of life, not being treated as an animal. That's not going to reform anyone. So education, coping skills, job, different ways to, once you are released back into society, which is mainly the women that I deal with, people that are getting ready to be brought back into society with less than enough skills to be able to support themselves or to be productive members of society. So there is still a need in that arena. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
We do have one question. Representative Petrie.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We had just heard from our sheriffs about the fact that this does not occur. So I'm trying to understand. So you do some volunteer work in jails or prisons, and you just described places used the term subhuman.
Yes.
So where are those facilities? Are those state correctional facilities? Are those county jails? Are those municipal jails? Tell me where those are located.
There are some metro state prisons in which the women feel that they don't have voices, and if they speak up, which I'm standing here speaking for them, because they feel like they will be targeted and even treated even worse.
State prisons. You're talking about Department of Corrections,
Yes, sir.
Georgia State prisons.
I am.
Okay. You're not speaking to jails, county jails.
Not
Just want to
per
make
se.
sure we understand the issue. It's
Yes, I go
important.
into the actually Metro State prison systems and speak
Okay.
with the women there on a weekly basis. I'm
Okay.
on a monthly basis,
Okay.
and I hear different things. And some of the things that I saw 25 plus years ago, some of those things are still occurring, and those women feel like they don't have a voice, and that's why I'm here today.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
No, thank you for being in recovery. Oh, Representative Reinders, you got a question?
Yeah, thank you. And listen to the last one, and we all want everything done right, but I hear terms like subhuman. So have you witnessed subhuman conditions yourself, not what others have said? When's the last time you witnessed a subhuman
Over
event?
25 years ago for
Okay.
myself, so everything else is,
Is based on what someone told you?
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay, thank you. Sashi, Shuharm, sure. Shukura. Oh, okay. Is it Sashi? Oh.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Eshe Shukura, and I am the Georgia State organizer for an organization called URGE, Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. URGE is a reproductive justice organization. We're a national reproductive justice organization that believes in dignity and respect for all marginalized communities. I am here in support of this bill, and I am also here in support of asking that this bill be merged with HB 475, Dignity for Incarcerated Women. People deserve to give birth in healthy environments and to ensure the safety of themselves and their children. Anti-shackling is the beginning of this, but we also need to consider prenatal, perinatal, and postpartum care. We need to make sure that people have access to showers and fresh clothing after delivery, that folks are not put into solitary confinement after giving birth just because we can't address hygiene needs. Dignity for incarcerated women is comprehensive and would only add to this important legislation. I also like to add that the committee consider amending the part around folks being having restraints, not having restraints only in the second to third trimester, and that we actually include the first trimester, because we can't expect guards who are overworked to know what stages of pregnancy a woman is in. This legislation is very important to me because when I was 16, which is 12 years ago, I first learned of shackling and that folks who were incarcerated and gave birth were shackled from a bill that was in the Georgia legislature. And it's 12 years ago. 12. I don't want to wait another 12 years for legislation like this to be passed. So yeah, I'm from Georgia. I represent Georgia, and I thank y'all for letting me speak.
Okay, questions? Are you getting your messages from out before? Do you have another question?
No, I was asking someone to contact Department of Corrections for me.
Okay, I wanted to, if somebody's here, thank you for coming. I will tell you that bills here often start off, I mean, in a perfect world, we would have, there was another bill, I think it's been dropped, that has probably everything that anybody could ever want in a birthing situation. In a perfect world, women would have that and incarcerated. They would be able to put, breastfeed and or put their, have a place to pump their breast and save the breast milk. It's not a perfect world. And there are a lot of needs across our state, and so as the author of this bill, I have tried to do the things that would be protective, and it's just like but we also have to make it realistic for our sheriffs and the people where they're incarcerated. Many women, some women don't even know that they are pregnant for the first trimester. So it would be very hard to say that no one could be shackled in the first trimester. I think that it would be very hard to identify that. and are always have tests for that. So we're working on what we can do. The sheriffs across our state are trying to say that they never shackle anybody. That is contrary to the stories that I'm getting of currently where people are shackled. So we're going at the immediate problem, but I appreciate you being here. And when bills are in two different areas of the law, you really can't put them together. So the one that you asked for it to be blended with is in another area of the law, and it does not fit here, and it's another section of the law, just so you'll know.
Thank you.
A little lesson on
I would also like the Georgia dream bigger and think that we can do better and make things happen, because as a Georgia resident, I dream big. I make things happen all the time on college campuses, in my community, and in my work, and I always dream big. So let's dream bigger, y'all.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for what you do. Ruby Beth Butchin, I can't. I am terrible. I am killing everybody's name today.
Fine. Beauty cat.
I'm tired. And tell us who you're with.
I am a lawyer with the Southern Center for Human Rights. I'm the Public Policy Fellow at the Southern Center for Human Rights. So I just first wanted to start by thanking you, Chairwoman, for your leadership on this issue. We at the Southern Center have been working with dozens of people from a number of organizations about improving the conditions of confinement in a lot of different arenas for women who are incarcerated in Georgia, both in prisons and in local jails. And as we were just discussing, we know that there are 3 bills in the House considering these issues. And to echo earlier statements, HB 475 has all of the provisions that our coalition agreed were essential changes to the law that would restore dignity to incarcerated women. We do understand that there are a lot of concerns about costs, but there are many things that are in HB 475 that, if passed into law, would not cost any money, including prohibiting the use of solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a cruel and inhumane practice, and it has been proven to cause trauma and long-term negative consequences. States across the country, like Mississippi and Texas, have heavily reformed the use of solitary confinement, and it should be the law in Georgia that no mother who has just had a baby is held in solitary confinement. There are more dignified ways to observe a woman who has given birth, to respect and observe a woman who's given birth, than to lock her in a small cell without natural light for 23 hours a day. We fully support HB 345, but would ask that it would be amended to prohibit solitary confinement of women who are pregnant or during postpartum period. Additionally, just in terms of the comments earlier about breastfeeding and some of the other practices, I would ask us to look to Alabama, which has done a lot around offering breastfeeding and doula services to incarcerated women.
Okay,
Thank you.
Are there questions? Okay, do we have thank you, no question. Do we have anybody, I mean, is our State Department, they were supposed to be here, and the person that runs our prison system, okay? Okay, here we go. All right. And when you, identify yourself.
I'm Rob Thoreau. I'm from the Department of Corrections.
And when you came the other day, you had the head of the women's division.
We had the Director of Female Services, yes, ma'am, and she couldn't be here today, but I do have our Assistant Commissioner of Health Services with us in case.
Okay,
it's more
could you
specific
could you get that person to come up too?
Certainly.
Okay, when you came the other day, I was told that in our prison system, when women were pregnant, they were transferred to one facility. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Randy Sauls. I am the Assistant Commissioner for Health Services, and I'm glad to be here today. That is correct. All females in the state of Georgia do go to Lee Arendelle State Prison for diagnostic and classification. And once they're identified with a pregnancy test and they're pregnant, normally within 48 hours, they're transferred to the Helms facility here in the metro area.
And that is a facility strictly for pregnant women?
That facility is primarily for pregnant women, but there is a commission there. There will be some males housed there, separated by sight and sound. And those are generally males who are receiving chemotherapy services at Atlanta Medical Center. And they're close proximity to that facility for to ease their treatment. So, but primarily it's housing pregnant females.
And how long do they stay there?
They stay there during the course of their pregnancy. Their babies are delivered at the Atlanta Medical Center. And once the babies are delivered at the Atlanta Medical Center, they're returned to the Helms facility where they have a postpartum period. After that postpartum period, and they're released by the obstetrician, they will be transferred back to Lee Arundel State Prison or Pulaski State Prison, depending on their destination.
Do you put any pregnant woman or a woman who's delivered her baby in the postpartum room, do you put any of those in solitary confinement?
I can't answer that directly because I'm not sure what solitary confinement means. The facility there at the Helms facility is a two-room unit. Whether there's one woman in that room by herself, I couldn't testify to that, but it's usually two women in a room.
Well,
together.
solitary confinement would be.
Solitary is a disciplinary action, and I'm on the health side, so I couldn't say that those actions aren't taken if a disciplinary action is required, but the chances are that's not being done. I don't know what Mrs. Wiggins said the other day, so I can just say that our practice would not be to do that.
Okay. Go ahead, Representative Petrie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad the department's here. I was looking to find the department. I felt like that would be so much beneficial to this body. So, sir, can you tell us then the answer to my question earlier? How many children are born in our Georgia correctional facilities? It sounds like none in jails. We're hearing.
No.
How many are born in?
No, I mean you don't know that.
Well, according to the
Well, they
Mr.
don't.
Norris,
There are no statistics on it.
Well, right. He didn't say with concrete certainty that we didn't have any children born in our jails.
Well, not actually born in the jail. That's not, none of these. They would be taken to a hospital or a health facility.
Well, yeah, my question was more about pregnant women, I guess. So how many pregnant women do we have in, we're talking about shackling women, so tell us how many pregnant women are in our Georgia correctional system.
Our average, we deliver about 50 live births a year within our facilities, of which all are delivered at the Atlanta Medical Center, which is a Wellstar facility here in the metro Atlanta area.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
And what the director of the women's unit told me is that you will take pregnant women from county jails and from the sheriffs, other facilities across the state. Is that correct?
That's correct. Once they're in state custody and been transferred to state custody, we will pick them up as quick as we can get them. Once we're notified, we will take them.
Okay. Does that mean they have to be found, what's the sheriff, found guilty? In the court, by the court?
Once they're in sent to state custody, yes, ma'am. We'll pick them up immediately upon notification.
Okay.
And usually the jails, sheriff's department transport the women inmates to our facility. They may transport to the closest facility to them, and then we may retransport them to the Lee Arundel State Facility where they go through diagnostics, and we would do all their medical and diagnostic classification.
Okay, but if somebody gets, some woman is, they're cooking up a meth lab, and they get picked up for having a meth lab, and they're pregnant, they wouldn't have been found guilty, so they would stay in the jail or the...
Yes, ma'am.
Until they had a court date.
And they're sentenced to take prison, yes, ma'am.
So they could be held in the jails until, go ahead.
And so, thank you, sir, again, for being here. So, my question for you then, 50 live births a year in our Georgia correctional facilities. Most of those are, all of those, I assume, are occurring at the Helms facility, okay, and in conjunction with the Atlanta Medical Center. And so, surely, the department has policies for everything, I'm certain. And so what is the current policy as it relates to what you see before you in this bill? What is the current policy around shackling today? Is this, you had some folks here earlier that testified about things that had happened 25 years ago and maybe they had heard about since then. Tell us your thoughts on some of what you heard and what your policies are today that you know leadership is leading with in the system.
Well, we have a policy that requires no shackling of pregnant female offenders.
Okay.
That's the current policy. It's in writing, and that is our policy. I can't state to what others are doing, but the Georgia Department of Corrections has a no shackling policy that's entered into as a profile.
Representative Petrie, that's been good questions, and I certainly wish that all county jails and holding facilities had the same policies, but they don't across our state. And I'm very proud of our state for having those policies, and I wish they could take pregnant women from our sheriff's jails and our facilities and across the state if they were still just waiting to be found guilty, but they can't. And there are women in those facilities that are in various stages of pregnancy, and we are getting information that they are shackled at times. Okay, Representative Hutchinson.
Hi, I have a question. Thank you, Madam Chair. You said, walk me through this, the pregnant women go to the Arundel State Prison?
Yes, ma'am. That's our Lee Arundel State Prison is our diagnostic and classification facility.
And that's in
that
Alto?
all new incoming women would go through.
Okay, so that's in Alto, Georgia?
That's correct.
Okay.
Alto, Georgia,
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
So when they go into labor, they go to Atlanta Medical?
No, ma'am. When they're identified as positively testing pregnancy for a pregnancy test, within 48 hours, they are transferred, upon completion of that diagnostic classification, they are transferred to Helms facility here in Atlanta.
Okay, gotcha.
All pregnant females spend the entire course of their pregnancy at that facility. The primary focus of that facility is the nurturing of the pregnant females, providing the programs and services, in addition to other educational programs that they might ordinarily be part of, GED, those kind of things. They're not denied any of those access to services while they're undergoing their pregnancy, regardless of stage of pregnancy or gestational stage.
All right, that's what I had.
Thank you. That was the last question we have. Thank you very much for being here. And we have one more. I'm sorry, Representative. I thought this would be a little quicker. Joshua Edmonds, tell us who you're with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Joshua Edmonds with Georgia Life Alliance. We are the state affiliate to National Right to Life here in Georgia. I just want to thank Madam Chair for taking the time to work on this important legislation and for all of your consideration. I'll be very brief, as I know you've all had a very long day. Georgia Life Alliance is in absolute support of this legislation. Most people think we need to bifurcate the pro-life movement from being in support of women's rights, and that's simply not the case. And so we're here to make a statement and say that this is pro-life legislation, this is pro-woman, pro-baby, making sure we have healthy mothers and healthy babies in Georgia, and that we're respecting the dignity of women and children in all circumstances, because regardless of geography or circumstances, mothers matter and babies matter. So we ask for your favorable consideration.
And I want to tell you personally, I cannot thank you enough, because so often from groups, all we heard was just don't abort the baby, and then with no concern or no ever mention about what happens to the mother and the baby afterwards. And I am so glad that there is a new organization that has that concern and is concerned about what happens, when you encourage people when they don't have an abortion and they have the babies, and what happens to those people. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In our opinion, that's what being pro-life means, and we appreciate your leadership on this issue.
Thank you.
If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If not,
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Sheriff, do you want to say something?
If you wouldn't, 1 second.
Sure.
Madam Chair.
And I'm not trying to be hard on the sheriffs, because you have
no,
a
no,
hard
I
job.
do not take it that way. Terry Norris, I'm Executive Director of the Georgia Sheriff's Association. There are about 38,000, a few more than 38,000 people in 143 county jails. I don't know how many of that 38,000 are female. We do not have a statewide database for jail data. So most of those people in county jails have not been convicted of anything. Our state has had the wisdom throughout the years not to impose mandates on policy for running county jails. Your county jails are paid for by your local property taxpayers, and it is the sole responsibility of the elected sheriff to take care of the care and custody of the inmates. County Commission pay for it, local property taxpayers pay for it. As far as policies, there are as many different policies on this and other issues in jails as there are jails. As I said, we don't have state mandated policies, which is good, So I want you to know, even though there's nothing mandated in state law on this or any other issue in a jail, we are very good at what we do in running jails. We use best practices. On this issue, I venture to say nobody's intentionally or nobody's shackling or handcuffing pregnant inmates unless it's for their own safety. Now, it happens. Surely it does. So what we did, I started in 1995 with the Sheriff's Association. Since we had no policies on this matter, we began a jail advisory task force. We picked the smartest guys and girls in our 10 regions throughout the state, and we have developed voluntary jail standards for every sheriff in the state to use. Now, they are minimum standards, but they are standards. And we do have policies. I can't cite our policy, our model policy for you today. So I wanted to thank you, Madam Chair. I just didn't want you all to think that there wasn't some guidance out there for this very important issue. So that's really all I had to say. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, but you're not saying, Sheriff, just like there are guidelines, I mean, and, you know, the county governments and so forth, you know, and the commissioners and stuff, but we do set regulations on county commissioners, and we do have the right to set a state standard, and we do it on lots of issues, on local government and other local issues. So you're not saying that the legislators don't have the right
No, ma'am, I am
to set
saying,
a statewide standard about when this state of Georgia, we do not want pregnant women shackled.
no, ma'am, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that this legislature historically has had the wisdom not to impose standards upon the jails.
Well, Sheriff,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I mean,
What I wanted to say is a jail is not a prison. It's run differently. There are different constitutional standards and rights that those that are not convicted have. So I'm not opposing anything. I just wanted to make that clear.
okay, but there are certain human dignity things that would fit in any kind of
Certainly.
penal
Certainly.
facility.
Yes, ma'am, certainly.
And one of that would, as far as I'm concerned, would be not shackling women. And I know you have guidelines, but it's just like when I passed the stalking law, and, you know, we supposedly, all our county courts and stuff around would do what was in that law, and they weren't, because they could. The judges could do what they wanted to. So, you know, the sheriffs basically, you know, since this is a voluntary thing, don't have to do something. And they don't have to follow the guidelines of not shackling.
Well, no, they don't have to follow any policy in that regard, but they are responsible. They are solely responsible. So it's a personal thing for them. So I can't attest to the fact that every one of 143 county jails is new, is clean, and is modern, because they're not. And I can also certainly attest to the fact that jailers in our state are the least paid law enforcement professional we have. We have a hard time finding them. So there are areas that we don't do things right. I'm not disputing that, but I am saying that I just wanted to make sure y'all knew we've got something in place that we believe most of them comply with.
And I think that's what we're trying to get at, Sheriff. You know, the ones, I mean, we're not going, in a perfect world, they would all be clean and new with the latest.
Yes, ma'am.
And like I say, there's a bill out there for that, and there are people who would like to have that. And it's not in this bill because I recognize, you know, what y'all are up against. We ask you to do everything, pick up our mentally ill, sit in the, you know, we ask a lot of you.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. I just wanted to be clear
Sheriff,
to
I know
everybody.
that.
Yes, ma'am.
I've worked with you a long time.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just that I think we need to put just an overall comment from the state is that we don't want
And you and I talked about some changes.
that might
Yes,
make it
ma'am.
on not putting an extra burden
Yes,
on
ma'am.
reporting and some things too. And you know I'll work with you on
ma'am.
that as we go forward.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you,
Representative Hutchinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, Sheriff.
Sheriff?
Yes,
I wanted to understand what exactly the conversation is, because I thought it was about numbers of women in jails that were giving birth, but it sounds like your opposition is not to putting mandates on the sheriffs.
Well, that's the
or jails.
fundamental opposition on anything we come down here for, because it is your local property taxpayer that pays for all this. And we do know that the counties and the cities have things going on that y'all do. But yes, but may I also say that I didn't mean to imply no child has ever been born in a jail. I did mean to imply that it doesn't happen frequently. And you got to remember, jails are intended to be stops. You're supposed to, when you go to jail, you're supposed to get out. If you get out, you get convicted, you come back, and then we transport to the prison system. So the time typically people are staying in jail is not very long. And I will tell you this, theoretically, criminal justice reform put more sentenced inmates in county jails. That's why I said that. Criminal justice reform caused that.
I had another question. So what you're saying, you mentioned taxpayer dollars.
Yes, ma'am.
But I would venture to say if you have even one child that's born with a mother who's shackled right before or right after birth, the subsequent mental health of that child that is raised will cost us way more taxpayer dollars than it would to put this mandate on jails.
Make it clear, I'm not saying they're shackling them at that time, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. Nobody this is the thing y'all, I hope you'll understand about sheriffs. They are fiduciaries for local dollars. They run the jail. Jails are, like I said, 38,000 plus people in county jails. It is a common everyday occurrence that people come to jail sick, pregnant, all sorts of conditions. They don't want them in county jails if they don't have to be there and they're ill. So generally speaking, if we know if they know one's pregnant and if they're anywhere close, they're going to get them out of that jail as best they can if there's a legal means to do that. So it's not, please don't think that sheriffs want pregnant women in jails. And in fact, there's some jails that do not house any women because they just simply don't have the facility. But I hope you all don't think that we're unsympathetic and hardliners on shackling everybody, because that's not happening.
So this shouldn't affect the jails that much if what you're saying is true. That not many women are being shackled or even housed. Because from Gwinnett County, the Gwinnett County Jail, they're not in there short periods of time. They're in there for years and years and years.
And why is that?
There's lots of reasons. That's not Health and Human Services related.
Our state policy has changed over the years, and we are sentencing people to jails instead of prisons. That's not an obligation of the county or the sheriff. That's a fact. So yes, a lot of those people should be in the prison system, but they're not.
Mm-hmm. True.
So they end up with us. Yes, ma'am.
But if they're in there for a long time and they've been sheriff and they've been, is it called adjudicated?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because I'm not a lawyer, but what our state prisoners saying, if they're in there, and maybe your sheriffs don't know because maybe the communication doesn't get to them, if they've been adjudicated, then they can be taken to our state facility for pregnant women.
Not all inmates who have been sentenced to the custody of the state can go to the state prison. A lot of inmates, judges send them to the county jail. They don't have enough time to get in there. So there's some, it's a little bit, if you get way into the weeds, you'll see that there are people that are in county jails for long periods of time who failed on probation, but they'll never go to the state prison system. They'll serve whatever time they have in the county jail. Yes, they're a state inmate, but they just don't go to the prison system.
Okay.
This is a whole different conversation.
It is a whole different conversation.
It's a little convoluted.
I mean, it really is convoluted. All we want is
yes,
just
ma'am, I understand.
don't shackle pregnant women.
But may I leave and say, we don't want to shackle anybody that's pregnant and fixing to have a baby or just had a baby. That's not what the sheriffs want. So.
Good, we're in agreement then.
Representative Reinders.
I think we've got some people who would almost like to call the question based on my phone blowing up here.
Thank you.
But the truth of the matter is, in governmental affairs, I deal with counties and cities every time, and they say, forgive us for a few bad actors. So I don't know if we got a jail out there or a sheriff out there that's a few bad actors. So I appreciate you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's not to say it does happen. But on the other hand, I'd also say that they should bring us. You're right. We have the right to set the guidelines. There's a part of me, though, that they should bring us with the minimum standards so we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater instead of just doing it through in-house regulations and things of this nature. I don't know if I've got enough information on this. I don't think people are, I don't know if, no one believes in shackling a pregnant woman. I don't believe that. And the truth of the matter is, Sheriff, it makes no difference how much they're made, whether they're going to shackle someone right or wrong, because the truth of the matter is just, it's not good policing. It has nothing to do with pay. It's the character of the individual to me. It has nothing to do with that. But there's a part of me thinks we need more information on this where we can actually look at what the protocols are and set them in place.
Well, Representative Reinders, I'm going to go back to what I usually go back to. I don't like people coming to me at the very last minute. And the first time I have seen the sheriff is today, right before this meeting.
And I get that 100%.
Right. And I have said over and over, don't come to me at the last minute with opposition to a bill on any bill. Now, the sheriff says he doesn't have help. He's the only one down here, and he's going between other bills. And I understand that. But this bill has been out there, and we are getting close to crossover. I have said to him, I am willing to work with him. We have the time, and I am willing to do that.
Madam Chair, can I move to call the question then?
Yes, please do.
I move to call the question.
Okay, you're recognized to call the question.
All those in favor of House Bill 345, please signify by saying aye.
Well, I thought you were going to make a motion.
Well, okay, I'm going to move. I'm going to move that we call the question and ask the chair to decide whether she wants to favorably consider or not. I thought I did that when I said move the question.
So, okay, right, Representative Newton.
Thank you. Is there, is there a motion to?
There's a motion to ask her to call the question.
Did I say that right? No. Okay. Can I have okay, I need a motion on the substitute to House Bill 345.
Is there a motion? Go ahead. To do pass? All right, we have a motion and a second.
Right.
Is there other discussion?
Okay.
Hearing none, all in favor of House Bill 345, substitute House Bill 345, LC 337826S, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. And the bill passes.
Right. Sheriff, I'm willing to work with you on this. We have time that passes the House to go over, and I'm willing to work with you on it. Okay, thank you. Thank you to the committee. Okay, Representative Knight, sorry.
That was the easy one. I thought that was going to be an easy one.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Representative Petrie, if you have specific. It's House Bill 233.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure we're committee substitute LC 337792S. Just to confirm, Madam Chair.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yes, ma'am.
LC 337792S.
Yes, ma'am.
You've got it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know everybody's, this time of the session, everything's getting pushed and really tight, but I want to present House Bill 233 by substitute, committee substitute to you today. I would implore to you that this is probably one of the most important bills that this General Assembly will take up this year. Healthcare in this state and in this nation is at a crisis and a point where we all recognize, we hear it every day in our lives, from our families, from our communities, everywhere we have an issue of health care. And this bill seeks to address a portion of that that makes sure that we have patient care and choice. So, Madam Chair, what this bill does, and I'm going to abbreviate my comments and then let the committee, if they want to go over the bill in each section, but I'll abbreviate what the bill does in the interest of time, and we do have some folks that have come here to testify, and I think it's very important. I want to start with pharmacies affiliated with Pbm Insurers, and I want to reiterate that. Pharmacies, okay, that are affiliated with PBMs and insurers are utilizing their relationships to target patients via steering and data mining. These practices compromise patient care and patient choice. And despite the assertions by PBMs and insurers to the contrary, they can lead to waste, increased cost, which is why most healthcare providers, including physicians, are subject to anti-steering laws. And I want to repeat that. Most healthcare providers, including physicians, are subject to anti-steering laws. You can't self-deal.
For the committee, you want to tell them what you mean by anti-steering laws, just very briefly.
Self-referrals. You can't own companies and self-refer. It's self-dealing, okay?
In other words, if a physician owns a freestanding radiology facility, the physician cannot refer his patients to that facility for MRIs and CT scans. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. And that's correct. And it's self-dealing. It's not in the interest of the public good.
And what happens if they do it? They can be subject to.
Well, they can be subject to
prison.
Prison. I mean, you got federal laws that prohibit that, and I believe state laws. And I know the Stark law or provision. I know you're familiar with it, and Dr. Newton are familiar with it.
All right.
What this bill seeks to do is, number one, it prohibits pharmacies owned by PBMs and insurance affiliates from poaching patient information for commercial purposes, and that is non-patient care purposes. Our information should be ours. If it's with an insurance company, it should not be used for their self-interest. Prohibits pharmacies from receiving self-dealing referrals from their affiliates and billing for the same. In other words, they're actually carrying out the referral and they actually have billed and provided the service. Prohibiting all pharmacies from mailing drugs when a physician indicates a direct pharmacy consultation is necessary. And we do have provisions that the patient can waive the in-person consultation. But again, we're giving deference to our physicians. And we're requiring pharmacies to disclose their affiliates to the board. And again, transparency is something we lack in this whole insurance industry and healthcare industry is transparency. And many of us don't know where those affiliates are. Again, requiring pharmacies to disclose the affiliates with the board. And lastly, it gives the Board of Pharmacy oversight. Because we are, and I want to stress this, we are regulating pharmacies. We're telling pharmacies, I don't care who you are, if you've got an affiliate, you can't self-deal. Madam Chair, that's the heart of the bill. I know I want to thank many of you. Many of you have signed on to this bill. Many of you have heard back from your communities, from people in your communities, pharmacies, all of the folks that are supporting this because it's about patient choice. And it's about the quality of health care that our Georgians are demanding, and they're tired of the current health care system that is being dominated and is non-transparent. Madam Chair, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. I just have something I think I have to share. First time I think I've ever had a health bill with that many signatures on it. You do. You've been
without any?
No.
Oh, with so many.
No, with that many.
Madam Chair, we had over 90. I want to say it was 98. It was 97 or 98 co-sponsors, and that's how important this bill is, and it's a testimony to the bipartisan issue that is facing Georgia. And it is a testament to what people in their communities are hearing, and the representatives are listening, and they're listening to the patients, and they're tired of this.
Wow, I thought I really worked bills when I got 6 signatures on the front of the bills. I'll have to catch up and start going around and getting more signatures. Okay, Representative Reinders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, because of the number of signatures, and I think everyone on here, I move to pass.
Well,
We're not exactly ready for that,
but there's
Representative
and no, all fairness, there is some testimony, and it's brief. The people have come here today, and there's a couple of people that
I
testimony.
wanted to
We've
vote
told them.
yes before I had to go to my next meeting.
Well, this will be brief, but I think this is powerful what we're going to hear, and I do, and we've asked the folks here to be brief and tell a story. With that, Madam Chair, if we can hear those before they leave.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to the committee. My name is Dr. Jennifer Shannon. I'm a clinical pharmacist, a mother of 4, and I'm a proud owner of a pharmacy that we built from the ground up in Johns Creek, Georgia, known as Lily's Pharmacy. And I opened my pharmacy with my husband in hopes to change the course of care in my community because I saw how bad it had become at the pharmacist level. I can say with confidence that because of the practices of the PBM-owned pharmacies and their coercive and misleading letters that they send to our patients every day, it is becoming increasingly difficult to provide a continuum of care for these patients. They send letters to our patients saying they can no longer fill with the pharmacist of their choice. They call them, strip them of the physician and pharmacist relationship at the ground level. And finally, they call physicians obtaining prescriptions and auto-ship these drugs to patients across the state and country without their consent. Can you even imagine what this is doing to the critically ill, the elderly, and just our family members in our community? It is plain disgusting. The only choice patients are left with is ADHD medications at the local level or antibiotics that they can fill while their chronic disease state medications are being filled at a mail order pharmacy because the PBM owns that pharmacy and they have mandated the patient do this. This is happening every day. And this horrifying policy written by so many people that aren't healthcare providers leads to polypharmacy where medications are filled at multiple pharmacies, likely written by multiple doctors without one person being the hub of medication care and the final check and balance, thereby, in essence, preventing and removing the life-saving step of a pharmacist, which is to analyze and critically evaluate if there are drug-drug or drug-disease state interactions before giving that medication to the patient. This is hospitalizing our friends, our family members, and our neighbors across the state every single day. Drugs are auto-shipped in duplications and are filled locally at the local CVS, and Caremark is sending the same drugs. Our elderly patients are taking them every day in duplicates and going into the hospital. I see it all the time. A Korean War veteran patient of mine was auto-shipped Parkinson's drugs. He didn't have a diagnosis for Parkinson's disease. There was no one behind that 1-800 number to say anything but, oh, I'm sorry, we won't send those again. The pharmacies owned by PBMs have turned medications, which are life-saving and dangerous at the same time, into a production line and cost center for their own greed. And because the premiums paid for the PBM service are not enough, they've gotten prescription revenue as well, taking 80% of control over prescriptions across the United States. They've replaced human touch and empathy with packages thrown upside down on a front porch and stripped the caring face of the pharmacist needed to counsel on that very treatment. They tout delivery to your door, they send the wrong medications, insulin to sit in the heat, and even worse, open insulin, but nothing but a 1-800 number for that patient to call. I'll leave you with this. At the end of the day, I'm not sure that any of the people that have created these policies by the PBM-owned pharmacies ever took a Hippocratic oath and raised their right hand and said, I will do no harm, because if they did, they would never send a steering letter, make a phone call, or coerce or force people into care that is anything but care. As a healthcare provider, I could never in good conscience provide care to someone who did not choose me as their pharmacist. Everywhere in healthcare, patients are given a choice except for when it comes to their pharmacy and pharmacist care. Please vote in favor of this bill and give patients the choice to receive real care from a pharmacist of their choice. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I'll keep it brief. My name is Dr. Melissa Dilma. I'm a medical oncologist. I serve in a state capacity as well as a federal capacity working on government policy. And one of my focuses has always been, over the last few years, PBM-owned pharmacies and how they are eroding and causing dangerous problems for my patients. So I'm a medical oncologist in Rome, Georgia, a small town, and about 30% of the drugs that are in the pipeline right now for oncology are oral. So these are pills by mouth. And so they're very expensive medications, number one, and they require a lot of oversight, just like an IV medication would. But it takes a lot of special nursing and pharmacy and doctor interaction with the patients, sometimes 2-3 times a week, to make sure that they're not having any side effects and to mitigate those side effects so they can successfully battle their cancer. And I wanted to share just one story with you so I can cut it brief. About November, I had a young woman come to me. She was 12 years out from her breast cancer, and someone had diagnosed her with shingles on her reconstructed breast. It wasn't. It was her breast cancer that was back 12 years later. And it had, by this time, eaten away her chest wall. She's a professional. She's self-employed. She has insurance. And so I said, well, there's a great new drug. It's a pill by mouth. I'm going to combine that with a hormone blocker, and we're going to get you on it this week, and you're going to turn around within a week. It took me 5 weeks. I have that drug in my office. I could have given it to her that day, but it took me 5 weeks to go through a prior authorization and that many weeks to get her mail order pharmacy to get it to her while she was taking multiple narcotics to deal with the pain of her chest wall rotting away. To me, that's like a child coming to my door who's starving on Thanksgiving Day, and I've got a buffet, and you telling me I can't give food to that child. It hurt my heart. And it happens day after day. This is a file folder from 1 week, just 1 week. I got my nurse to collect all the patients who are denied the ability to get their drug in my office, and they're being, on average, 3 to 4 weeks before they're getting their chemotherapy drugs because they have to come through a mail order pharmacy. Oftentimes, by the time they get there, they're either too sick to take that medication or it's the wrong drug by that point, or it may come and it's the wrong dose. So there are multiple concerns I have about delivering high quality, high value care to my patients that are being come into question by this practice. So I appreciate your looking at this bill.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, oncology is not my area. Mm-hmm. But I think what you're saying, and I think what I understand about it is that you often have to try one drug. And, for a short period of time, the patient may not be able to tolerate that drug, because of the side effects to it, or
Correct.
You may feel like the patient's not responding in a very short time, and you would have to change that drug in a very short period of time. Is that correct in dealing with oncology drugs?
That's true, and oftentimes we have to change the dose. So, for instance, this week I had a patient who had completed their course of therapy. They got $5,000 worth of a medication shipped to their home by their mail order pharmacy that they shouldn't be taking, and they brought it back. And the mail order pharmacy said over the phone, they didn't pay much for it anyway, but the healthcare consumer and it was a Medicare patient was paying.
So Medicare paid a big price for a medicine that would go unused because it was the wrong medicine and.
Correct, the wrong medicine, and the patient brought it back in, thank goodness, and didn't take it because it could have been very deadly if they had taken that medication and they weren't supposed to be taking that medication.
Okay, other questions? Thank you very much for. Oh, wait a minute, Representative Dempsey.
I just want to say thank you for all you do.
You're welcome, thank you.
And I can echo that. Working with oncology patients is truly a gift from the heart for the physicians and nurses that work day in and day out with patients whose lives hang in the balance with their cancer. So I'll echo Representative Dempsey, who's a good Rome girl, and say thank you, too, for treating Georgia patients. Okay, no questions? What is the wish of the committee? Okay. Representative Hatchett? Okay, we have a motion to approve the, what are we doing? Which one is it? The substitute to House Bill 233. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? No questions. Everyone in the favor of the passage of the substitute to House Bill 233, say aye. Aye. Everyone opposed, no. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you, Representative Knight. Okay.
Committee, thank you. I'm telling you, this was probably going to be one of the most important bills that we have taken up this session. and probably doing more for patients of Georgia and our Georgia citizens too. So thank you again.
Well,
for-
I will
for
tell you,
your
I've been very
consideration.
concerned. My little adopted mom, they found her one time sitting in her chair, and somebody had to, but they couldn't get her to respond, even though they could see her. They had to climb to a window, and when she ended up in the hospital, she was on 23 different meds because she was elderly and didn't understand what she was taking. The hospital pharmacist had it, and she left the hospital on insulin and one heart pill. I know that our pharmacists are sort of a last ditch sort of check on that for many of our patients, because when they go to their computers and it looks like they're taking something that they're already have a drug for, that's when they talk to them. And I think that's extremely important, especially for the elderly, because they like to take the pills, and even though the doctor gave them another one, they keep taking the other one, and it tends to be a real problem. So thank you for that bill. Okay, we've got one more. Representative Newton, make it short and sweet. Representative Jaspers, we need you back here. We need the quorum.
You didn't make it in time,
2,
Rick.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll be really quick. He'll be really quick. It's a resolution.
You don't want to let Doc
I mean, let's see how fast he can talk. Go.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, members of the committee. I bring you House Resolution 261, LC 337735. This creates a joint study committee for evaluating and simplifying physician oversight of providers that provide a lot of health care in our communities, but like physician assistants and advanced practice registered nurses, APRNs. That would include CRNAs, nurse practitioners. It creates a joint study committee along with the Senate to look, rather than have isolated things like, say, opioid prescribing or CT scans and MRIs or different things, that we could have a very organized approach to it with a study committee that would maybe look at what other states have done, look at what Georgia's done. There's significant differences between states. There's anywhere from a low of 500 hours of training for some specialists of clinical training before they're ready and certified and licensed, to up to 15,000 to 16,000 hours for the average physician in primary care, 11 years. So there's a big difference, but at the same time, we want to be efficient in how we deliver care to all Georgians at different levels. So this is a study committee to look at that and come back with some recommendations to the health committees and the two different bodies, so that we can look at an organized way for doing that.
Yes, Dr. Newton, real quick, just a question. So this is something I believe is way overdue. You want to look at not just nurse practitioners. You say mid-level providers. Does that include
There is
others
an
you can
amendment that I'll bring
delegate
in just a
down
minute, but physician
Okay.
assistants and
Physician
advanced
assistants?
practice registered
So
nurses.
to discover how we can do more delegating going forward
Right.
to some of those mid-level providers.
In a
I think,
streamlined way.
Thank you
If
for-
they're
Thank you for
appropriate.
bringing this. If
Not
they're appropriate,
necessarily,
yeah. But I
not
mean, to study
necessarily
what would be
automatically, but study.
Yeah, to study it, yeah, because we seem to get a lot of interest in these things, and it needs to be more comprehensive. I appreciate you bringing this.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, okay.
Oh.
Everybody, no, hold on.
Sorry.
Do I have a motion on the bill, or on the resolution? So moved in a second. All right, on the House Resolution 261. We have a motion to move and a second. Now we're ready for the amendment.
I do have an amendment proposed, AM 33-1843. It just updates the language a little bit on the lines of this. Wherever it says mid-level providers, I propose changing that to the term physician assistants and advanced practice registered nurses. The mid-level providers is an older term that was they kind of recognized that there was a difference in the level of training, but that's gotten to be a kind of a dated term. So the effort was to change it on lines 2, 3, 5, 10, and 16. Anywhere it said mid-level providers, to change to that other phrase. Doesn't change the gist of the bill at all.
Motion on the amendment. Okay, second? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Okay, everybody in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Okay, anyone opposed, no? All right, we're back to the bill. So, we have a move on House Resolution 261 as amended. Does that go out as a substitute? It goes out as a substitute. So everyone in favor of the substitute to House Resolution 261 is amended, say aye. Aye. Everyone opposed, say no. The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
you.
Thank you.